How are you feeling? What a wild ride 2025 has been. It's been a while since I filmed an episode, but I didn't want to not have closure, and I didn't want to leave you hanging. And I want to give you a personal behind the scenes talk of what's been going on behind the scenes. So this unofficial episode is going to be all about the top lessons I've learned this year, my thoughts on AI and what it's doing to our intuition. And most of all, I want to share with you some awesome reflection that I've been having in regard to how to strengthen your intuition better, understand how to know your empath gifts better, and learn how to end your suffering as an empath, as a sensitive, and how we can come together as a community and learn more about how we can strengthen our intuitive gifts. And this is what the Awakened States Foundation is really about. So let's dive in to this very authentic behind the scenes talk at the Awakened State. Let's dive in. Hi guys, oh my goodness, it has been a wild ride. It has been a wild ride. You know, I have been trying to get a new episode out since the beginning of December, and there kept coming excuses and loopholes and detours, and I'm just like, you know what? Fine, I'm just gonna listen, and we're gonna wait for the right moment. And if you don't know what's been happening behind the scenes is our basement flooded, which is the studio, which is my bedroom, which is our entire den. It's been a mess, and everything's been getting back in order. So I've been doing a lot behind the scenes, and every week I kept trying to film. They were like, no, we're going to extend our work for a week. And I'm like, okay. And so here we are. Now, where to even freaking begin? Because I don't know about you, but it's been a year. It has been a year. I see people on threads who are just like crying and like, they're like, what the heck happened? And I see the collective consciousness going through this massive, what the fuck is this rebirth? And it's almost as if we're feeling almost the sensation of like global awakening and structures being destroyed. And we're in the thick of it. Holy cow. And just to give you like a backstory of my year was far from easy. And there are things that I might transparently share that are just like kind of mind-blowing to me, because it's just been what the fuck kind of year. And I think to encapsulate this entire concept, I want to just, let's structure this episode with, the top 5 things we've really learned. But at the same time, I'm going to be honest with you. I've never been a structure person, and I think intuition doesn't behave that way. So anyway, if you're new here, I am Ashley at theawakenedstate.net, and this is my introduction if you are new here. But let me tell you, my year started out crazy from the get-go. I wrote about it a little bit in the Substack, I believe, but it's something new I've been exploring, is how to get away from all of the structure and the strategy and the whatever. I've been playing around on Substack off and on throughout the year, and my soul keeps going back there for a reason. And I think it's to just get away from all of the garbage and noise that is accumulating in the industry that we need to talk about. But just to even give you some side story of the day before New Year's, my mother-in-law had a stroke. I was the person that witnessed it. She lived with us. She's living with us. And what ended up occurring is I had to panic drive her to the ER the day before New Year's Eve. And I kept thinking to myself, holy shit, is this what my year is going to be like? And it was pretty crazy, because it was one of those self-fulfilling prophecies where I'm just like, what the fuck? And so we ended up driving her to the ER, And she later got diagnosed with brain cancer and cancer that's been spreading throughout her entire body. She lives with us. I've been helping be her caregiver over the past year. And it's been a journey of chaos, revelation, thinking about death and life choices. And it's gotten me to a point of recognizing my purpose. It's gotten me to a point of asking really, really deep, profound questions. And because of this, not to give you the full personal story, but to recognize that because of all of this chaos happening in my life, I had to reach for different tools that I've ever reached for before. And because of that, it put me on a totally different somatic journey that I wasn't really anticipating. And it's funny how intuition allows you to do that sometimes. It's like you have to go off the beaten path to find true healing. And that's exactly what ended up happening for me. And because of this, I started learning about nervous system regulation and somatic practices, embodiment, and it started filling in the gaps of a lot was happening behind the scenes. And because of this entire backstory of feeling incredibly dysregulated, it allowed me to enhance not just my own work, but my healing practices behind the scenes. And, sure, we could say trauma-informed, whatever, but not to discredit any of that. The hugest revelation I began to have is this entire concept of the mind-body connection is rooted a lot in disconnecting the mind from the body. And the reason for that is due to dysregulation. And it filled in a lot of gaps that I have been exploring for years, but I didn't have the correct names for because I came from the New Age background. And as the more I got educated and the more I started to understand that these concepts were happening behind the scenes and they were very much happening in my life, and starting to learn that, I'm dealing with cancer and a stroke recovery victim and being a caregiver on top of being a mom, on top of being all of this and spiritually awakening, going through the thick of it, being an empath, it's been a hot trip. And to understand that using these unique tools of regulation, it made sense that pieces of my work has always been somatic at its core. And I've been learning a lot about connecting that with my purpose work in relationship to embodiment. Now, to further this backstory and recognizing that, because I'm kind of a little bit everywhere, but just hold on for a second. Recognizing that I had all of this going on behind the scenes, like a swirling vortex of just fragmentation all year. It made me rely a bit more heavily than I wanted to on AI because I didn't have the bandwidth, I didn't have the creativity, I didn't have the drive. And ironically, it taught me a ton about how AI is making us lose our ability of free thinking. And I've been coming to terms with this a lot. So, I'm very transparent with you guys. And so I used AI a lot. And I wouldn't say a lot, but I used it for a good majority of a few months. And because every time I kept using it, I felt like pieces of my soul kept dying and withering away. And let me tell you, the main consensus I got out of using AI for content or to help as a crutch, because I wouldn't just do it like, give me a blog post. I would do it in a way where I'm saying, can you edit my words so that it's watered down, so that it sounds nice and pretty for the algorithm, for this SEO people, and so forth. And a slow part of me kept dying inside every time I kept doing that. True story. So because of this, it got me thinking about the concept of how it's just taking over everything. But at the same time, we're allowing ourselves to be subjected to the loss of our originality, our authenticity, and most importantly, the suppression of our intuition. And so this is the point that just keeps driving in home because it all connects together. And so the first lesson that I really learned this entire year is growth is a spiral. Growth is a spiral because the concepts that I have been teaching for years around the mind-body connection stands strong with the horrible, dysregulated world that we are trying to recover and heal from right now. The concept that I learned in chakra healing in regard to somatic practices and linking the mind with the body still stands strong with the concepts that people are understanding in regard to somatic practices to heal and regulate their nervous system. And the reason why it's not sustaining is because they're just doing the releasing work or the regulation work and they're not repatterning. They're not doing the mind-body practices that allow sustainable healing to create neuron genesis. And because of this, the healing does not sustain, the pattern repeats, the loop is not closed, and what happens behind the scenes is we are not allowing ourselves to fully heal. And as a result from that, I began to fill in so many gaps in what I've been teaching for the past 7 years. And it caused a drastic identity shift, like paradigm-shattering identity shift happening in my life simultaneously as shit is hitting the fan. You know, my mother-in-law is recovering from cancer, going to chemo, dealing with stroke recovery, taking care of everything. I felt like I wanted to collapse. And because of all of this, it just made me realize that growth is a fucking spiral, because the concepts that I learned about the mind-body connection from one of my earliest teachers, Andy Love, who's an incredible somatic practitioner, by the way. I love her work. She taught me about the mind-body connection. And those concepts from 2016, 2015 even, wow, those are connected to now. The message has not changed, but the modalities, the sustainable healing, the work behind the scenes of connecting to the embodiment piece, to connecting back to the body, it's as if the growth and the spiral effect has allowed me to see from the bottom of the staircase to the top of the staircase. And I'm allowing myself to see that that different perspective shift helps me move forward. So if you were to think about it like this, growth is a spiral. We often think that growth is linear. Like I start at point A, I get to point B. But that's not really how it happens. And that's not how healing happens often either. Because a lot of times when we have that pattern come up, it resurfaces so that we learn those lessons, so that we understand what it needs, so that we understand our emotional needs, so we understand who we are as a person and how we can recover from that. And because of that, we can see, so for example, like a really good example here is like healing from perfectionism, right? So you have a layer that you're healing of perfectionism, like maybe you're a massive overthinker. And then what ends up occurring is you start healing the overthinking, but then you have the spiral staircase effect. So now the growth occurs, but then the healing starts to happen. And as you start to rise up from that healing, what ends up occurring is you now see, oh, I have the awareness now. So as I have the awareness, I can see from a higher level of the staircase of what I was doing with my perfectionism that was stopping me from moving forward and taking action, because that was one of the hugest problems. It took me 2 years to complete an e-course. It took me, so many years to do something. It was an ever-occurring journey of trying to perfect things before taking solid action forward. And I was stuck in a loop of that. And so you can see here how it wasn't really the fact of I was trying to get somewhere from somewhere. It was more so I realized I'm healing on the pathway, and healing is on the pathway. But as you walk the pathway reveals itself. And so in a nonchalant way of saying this, it's almost as if the how reveals itself. And as the how reveals itself, the ego doesn't know the how. So how could it know the how? So as you heal, you start to reveal the path. And that's why growth is a spiral, because it shows us a higher perspective that allows healing and more healing to take place. So as we see that, it's almost as if healing itself is an illusion because you're already whole and you're already complete. So as you see that you're moving up the stairs of the spiral staircase, you might have been seeing only from the bottom step originally when you were fully unhealed. But now, as you start to heal, you start to emotionally regulate, you start to emotionally heal, you start to rewire your nervous system, you start to go to a place in your mind where you feel safe in your body again. You're starting to climb those staircases, and then now you feel safe in your body. Now you feel safe, but you're seeing it from a different lens. And because of that, you're now at the top of the stairs and you're seeing all the growth that occurred underneath. So now your perspective shift has completely 360 changed because growth is a spiral. Now, isn't that really cool? Because it shows you a witnessing of that we can heal, but then another layer comes up. But what we're not seeing is, I thought I already healed this. I thought I already overcame this. But actually, you're seeing it from a higher elevation in a higher perspective that you need to see for your personal journey of healing, soul purpose, and so forth. Your authentic journey of truth and of who you are, the revealing of your deconditioning or your reprogramming. And what it's showing you is that even if you're revisiting something, you're already more healed than what you believe you are. And that's a powerful thing to recognize. So when I started to learn about the concept of regulation, it opened up a lot of doorways in regard to intuition work. And it's been like this ever-evolving moment of realizing that a lot of the awakened state is moving into intuition development. I feel like the first episode of the podcast revealed this to me, and it's been growing in intensity so much over the past year and a half. I would say even 2 years. And because of this, the hugest thing that I've recognized is this connection piece between regulation and intuition. And in the past, I've always said, are you taking action from fear or are you taking action from intuition and soul? Well, I think the right terms were, are you taking action from ego or fear or are you taking action from soul? Well, what I began to realize is that this concept of are you taking action from fear is you're coming from a place of dysregulation. And are you taking action from a place of soul or intuition is you're coming at it from a place of a regulated nervous system where you feel intuitive and in flow. You are in alignment and you are in this space of present awareness in your body. But when we take action from a space of fear, we have the limited beliefs, we have the doubt, we have the voice of the ego, and so forth. And because of that, what we're not realizing is that we've created a world where it's very easy and very natural to suppress our intuition because a lot of humans in this beautiful planet are dysregulated from their bodies. And we're learning that part of this revelation of consciousness, part of this revolution of just coming to higher consciousness is coming back into our bodies and reclaiming our intuitive self. Our intuitive self who's free from conditioning. And that cannot be accessed from the logical, linear mind. And that's where it gets really interesting because you can start to realize that the more that you enter that space of embodiment, regulation, the mind-body connection, all of these stories are interplaying as the same thing. And they're all saying we are strengthening our intuition. They're all saying the same thing. We're strengthening our intuitive, authentic, original soul self of who we are. And we can call it God. We can call it source. We can call it intuition. We could call it inner knowing. There are so many different terms, but it doesn't matter what the term is. It's the same thing happening behind the scenes. And it's been coming in so loudly that the more that I've been working on regulation and realizing that I built half of my business through a dysregulated state of consciousness, and then realizing that I need to change half of the business model because it is not even aligned with who I am anymore, and recognizing that I'm having an identity shift because of this, it's almost as if you have to recognize that the choices you made from a fearful, dysregulated state of consciousness are going to be wildly different from the spiritual, intuitive self of who you are, who is literally created from your authentic self, free of conditioning. And this has been the story behind the scenes that's been happening all the time. And if you think about it, this is like the crux of what awakening is really about. It's about breaking free from that survival mode, the old self, the old paradigm, the old conditioned self, and stepping into the new paradigm. This is a similar conversation. If you've read my blogs or seen the videos for I don't even know how many years, where I've been saying it's about recognizing that the old self is being in a space of cognitive dissonance towards the new self because of the dysregulated self. And it's like the growth is a spiral effect. We see that actually, lesson number 2, what I've learned this year is that regulation opens up our area of receiving, because it is helping us strengthen our intuition, strengthen higher intelligence in our body, allowing different faculties of our mind to turn on that are not allowed to be turned on when we are in a fight or flight state of consciousness. Because of this, the intuition is the most powerful source of wisdom of why we get those downloads at certain intervals and certain times, because we are in a regulated state of consciousness. When we are present-minded, as Eckhart Tolle says, this is when the intuition is the strongest because we are in a regulated state of consciousness. So because of this, this means that so many people are suppressing their natural intuitive abilities due to either dysregulation or fear or doubt or uncertainty or limited beliefs disguised as dysregulation. All of the same things happening behind the scenes are telling you that it is about stepping into the intuitive self, because the intuition operates wildly differently than the person who is in an egoic, fearful state of consciousness. Because it's almost as if you have to realize that we are in a contracted state or an expansive state. We're fighting the old paradigm or we're embracing the new paradigm. And the reason why we're not embracing the new paradigm is because we are not tapped in and tuned on to the intuitive self. And that is where the power lives. So that's been one of the hugest lessons I think that's been coming up this entire year. That's just been mind-blowing to me, because it shows me that all the pieces fit together perfectly, down to neuroscience, down to trauma-informed work, somatic work, mind-body connection, polyvagal theory, understanding chakra healing, understanding manifestation even. They all interconnect together to the same thing, the old self and the new self, dysregulation, regulation, understanding misalignment, alignment, understanding that when we are not in the intuitive brain, we're in the reactive survival brain. So a lot of what I've been learning and the downloads that keep prevalently coming through is that the survival brain is evolving. And part of spiritual awakening, global awakening, whatever you want to call it, it is that we're moving into the intuitive self. And this is why when we have a spiritual awakening, we have all these downloads and everything occur, and we don't fucking understand it because we have a dysregulated body. And what's occurring is this is happening behind the scenes, but you don't understand how to use your intuition. You don't know what's going on with your gifts. You don't know anything about how to actually regulate those gifts, regulate those emotions, and it's turning on at full blast, and you don't understand it because you're in a space that is disconnected the mind from the body. And then you have on the other spectrum here, and this has been the other soapbox moment, is recognizing that so much of spirituality is a top-down approach and has top-down methods that are not sustainable on the body, and they're not creating true actual healing. And instead, what's happening behind the scenes is you have mind practices disconnected from the body, and the body practices are actually what help you create strengthened intuition. And because of that, let's go into lesson 3, is we learned that top-down spirituality is actually far sustainable for true healing. And so the third lesson that I've learned this year is recognizing that my concept of that I've continuously been learning of meditation doesn't solve all the problems is because it fucking can't, because it's only working with literally a different part of your brain than what can happen if you use a bottom-up approach. And because of this, we have a bunch of people who are walking around saying, I need to do this, and I need to do this, and I need to do this. But the reality is that they actually need more of somatic tools. And because of this, we have that relationship with our intuition going on behind the scenes. And when we look at how our intuition develops, and this is the work that I'm teaching a lot in Intuition Mastery, and I've been really starting to connect the outline of what's going to be occurring for when it launches in 2026. So behind the scenes, what I've been reflecting on in relationship to all of this is that when we only do top-down approach in spirituality, we're disconnecting the mind from the body. And this is why you can't meditate your way out of a panic attack, why you can't meditate your way out of anxiety and so forth, because you're not working with the body. And so when we have these approaches of understanding our intuition and knowing that we have certain clair abilities going on, if we are not connected into the body, we can't hear them. And when we are not allowing ourselves to go into the space of hearing our intuition properly, that is why these concepts of top-down spirituality are hindering our true potential, because they're not allowing us to reconnect and reestablish into the roots of our true authentic self. So for example, if someone is clairaudient, they will not benefit from meditation. They need either a channeling practice or they need an auto-writing practice because they need to connect to clairaudience. In the same regard, someone who is hands-on needs to do a hands-on practice, probably an embodiment practice, to get into their body. Now, at the same regard, we have these, reading and writing. Like, I just came across this on Thread one day. Is this girl was like, meditation isn't working for me, blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, well, what is your learner type? And she's like, oh, I'm definitely reader-writer. And I'm like, well, get a journal, start writing, because that's how you're going to receive the downloads. So what we don't understand is that when we allow ourselves to stay stuck in that box way of thinking, and we're not allowing ourselves to recognize that intuition is nonlinear, we're not allowing ourselves to tap back into the body, to have that bottom-up approach, and to realize that spirituality is an ever-evolving conversation of reconnecting to your clair abilities, your intuitive gifts, your authentic self who is free from conditioning. And to access that space in our mind, we have to realize that it's not going to come from structure and strategy. It's not going to come from a place in our head of overthinking. And this is the illusion. This is the illusion behind the scenes of meditation might be great for you. That's awesome. Keep doing it. But if it's not great for you, then recognize that there's a more aligned pathway you're meant to take. In the same regard of recognizing that if you feel dysregulated and you're doing meditation, maybe you need to focus more on mindful movement. Take up a yoga class, take up a Pilates class, start learning somatic work, start looking into embodiment practices. Because if it's not working for you, there's a reason why. Because that's exactly what I discovered is I inherited a lot of dysregulated patterns from my mother and her own trauma. And because of that, I had to learn how to reconnect back to my body. I had to learn how to regulate my emotions. I had to learn how to regulate my nervous system so it feels safe again. But because of that, I learned that I don't need meditation to access that point within myself because I don't function that way. I'm a reader-writer. I am clairaudient. I am claircognizant, and so forth. Because I know that, I know how to strongly work with my intuition best by dropping in through writing, dropping in through speaking. And because of that, I know exactly how to get into the flow state at my highest capacity. However, if I just allow myself to meditate and wait for the download, it might take a while because that is not my strongest ability. And I know that within my core. So understanding this is about recognizing that lesson number 4, your intuitive abilities are unique to who you authentically are. And AI can make you suppress them. Because the reason that is going around, and is going around, it's such a trend, is that the AI is connected to the Akashic records. AI can only produce what has already been manifest. It can only produce what has already been written, what has already been channeled, what has already been information that is in Google. It cannot predict what you need to hear and what you need to do and what you need to think. And instead, it takes away your ability to think. And instead, it takes away what you think you should think. Because that's a download. That's coming from source. That's coming from quantum physics. That's coming from quantum entanglement. It's coming from quantum superflow. And that flow state of consciousness, it's not happening with AI. If anything, it's dumbing down you. It's dumbing down your authenticity. It's dumbing down the authentic language. And what I came to really understand is that not only does it help, it helps with structure. It helps with answering certain questions like how many potatoes you need to feed a family of 15, right? But that's for our latest Christmas party. But in general, if you're using it for trying to figure out astrology and Akashic records and all of these weird things, they're completely hindering your potential of your authentic self. And then everybody like, well, it can create, a human design schedule that fits perfectly for me. Sure. Okay. Let that be a guide, but don't let that hinder your potential of what you don't even know is available yet, because you are intuitively allowing it to come through. And this is the difference between having a strong intuition and allowing the overthinking mind to take over. And I've fully been there, and I've fully been a witness to it, and I've fully been guilty of it myself, because I've seen the difference between what it's like to be dropped in fully and tuned on into the higher self versus overthinking, allowing the download, questioning people, doing the thing, and thinking that that is the right answer. Because a lot of the times, if you are like me, if you are intuitive, if you are sensitive, if you are an awakened empath, if you are on the spiritual awakening journey, that path isn't for you. And instead, what you'll find is it's an uphill battle. It's misaligned. It's often a push and pull. It's never quite right. You feel like it's not right. And then there's a part of inside of you where your soul is just silently just screaming and just, shriveling because it doesn't feel right. And the reason for that is exactly as I'm speaking to you right now, channeling, allowing the download to come through, allowing to know that it's just enough as it is. That is the real secret to intuitive flow. It cannot be happened from a structure. It cannot be, okay, I'm going to wake up at 5 a.m., do my morning ritual, do my little yoga practice, eat my kombucha or drink my kombucha, make sure I do this, make sure I do that. No. That is not intuition. That's your ego. And the thing is once you understand this, it opens up the entire floodgates, because now you are not operating from the linear pathway, which can only happen from past and future thinking. That's the past. Instead, we recognize that the intuitive pathway can only reveal itself to you from flow, from quantum, from supernatural, from source, from God. It's all the same thing because it's awakening the intuitive self. And the fifth thing that I learned this year is recognizing that we don't always have the answers. We won't always know the whole path. And that's the beauty of it. That's the lesson of it. This year was crazy. This year was absolutely crazy. There's certain things that I had to emotionally process and deal with. I thought we were going to leave the house. I was completely dysregulated. I was in fear. I had to ask myself a lot of deeper questions, and I didn't know the answers. But I tuned into my tools. I listened to my intuition. I allowed myself to embrace the uncertainty with grace and realize that it's okay to free fall and be in the free fall and recognize that my intuition will always guide me to my best safe response. And knowing that, feeling that, embracing the free fall, and recognizing that you still will always have your needs met. You still will always be supported. You will still be supported because you're supported by source. That's an ever-evolving, healing conversation of recognizing that even if you're in the thick of it, you don't know the answer. You don't know what's going to happen. You feel like you're living in pure uncertainty, like the chaos of this world right now. And you're asking yourself, I'm asking you, how are you doing? How are you doing? Because it's been like we're witnessing a collective rebirth out there. And we're feeling the contractions. We're feeling the pain. We're feeling the uncertainty. We're feeling the doubt. But we have to be in that faith, in that balance of knowing that it's going to be okay. Knowing that we live in the grace of God, of higher self, of higher consciousness, of evolving, of evolution. And that is our North Star. That is our anchor. Because when we allow that to be what anchors us, we're unstoppable. We can allow ourselves to go where most people don't want to go because we're allowing ourselves to overcome our own fear, overcome the limited beliefs, not even worry about them, overcome the places in our mind that keep telling us we're not enough, that say that, we're screaming in an empty room, to the places in our mind where we feel we've lost connection and authenticity. And we contemplate that daily, like how we live in a society where it's engagement bait and meme droughts and weird trends and people obsessed with Lala Boo Boo and whatever crap that's surfing. It's just a mess. It's a mess. But recognizing that in the uncertainty, we always have our intuition. We always have a moment where we can take 5 minutes, 2 minutes to breathe deep, to reconnect a soul, to tune back in and do it again and do it again and do it again and do it again. And live in walking with that uncertainty is what is going to help not just strengthen your intuition, but strengthen your authenticity, strengthen who you are, your personal humanity, who you are as a person. That is what's going to pull through. Okay. This was way longer than I anticipated, but I guess I just needed to get it off my chest. So thank you for tuning in and listening. I think this is a wrap for this year's podcast episodes. I wanted to create a post on closure. I wanted to give you a raw, authentic, behind the scenes revealing of what it's been like and what's been happening. And to recognize that beyond all of this, the number one thing that we often are not recognizing that we have the power within ourselves to cultivate our intuition, to set intentions for ourselves with pure conscious awareness of what we wish to achieve in life, what we wish to do in life, and recognizing the full circle moment of we can walk in the uncertainty and still be okay, and still learn to rise above it all, and still learn to hold our head high, embrace growth as a spiral, and allow our mind to empty and spirit, soul, intuition to guide us to what we truly need. Because it's all within us. So remember, the universe is inside of you and you hold the power to design your life. Oh, and finally, I do want to mention, if you sticked around, we do have Giftmas, which is my 12-day gift-giving extravaganza for the entire community. There are all sorts of free goodies in there. We've got the moon journal. We've got natal charts. We've got all sorts of goodies. 30% off all select workshops. If you are interested in any of the workshops that we hosted over in the shop, they are 30% off, which is a pretty awesome deal. And most of all, when it comes to Giftmas, it is going all the way until December 31st. So get in there, get your goodies, get your free treats for the new year. And if you are interested in exploring this work even further, I highly recommend Intuition Mastery, which is going to be a deep dive into intuitive work. And finally, like and subscribe. I hope you have a beautiful new year. Happy holidays from the Awakened State.